So you got the Mehron Paradise paints, good for you! And now here's some of my tips on how I use it to do makeup like those. Hello shapeshifter and doppelgangers alike, I'm MightyJ Cosplay and welcome to my channel. So in today's video I want to talk about the Mehron Paradise paints. I use them in pretty much all of my makeups. I've been using them in the last 3 years, and along those years I developed a lot of tips and tricks on using them, and I wanted to share that with you. So before we jump into the subject, just some quick reminder, you can give a like and subscribe to the channel for more Cosplay SFX makeup tips and tricks and Cosplay SFX makeup tutorials. You can also follow me on Instagram to see pictures of my makeups, and you can find the link in the description. So now that being said, let's talk about these bad boys and how to use them. So first, let's talk about body paint consistency, because with most water activated paint it comes in a pot like that. It is a solid form, and then you mix it with water to turn it liquidy, and that you can apply it on your skin using a brush or a sponge. But the thing that some people underestimate is that you can play with the consistency and the amount of water that you're using to mix it. So basically you can have a thick consistency or a more liquid consistency. So if you took like a liquid consistency, you just had more water, so like that, you see that you can easily see the water in the pan, and generally what will happen is that you apply it, you really see it's still liquidy, it have that kind of glossy shine, but then when it will dry down, it will have a little bit less coverage, but generally it will be more even. And then you can have a more thick consistency. I'm just quickly removing all the water, most water that I've put. So then when it's thick, I don't know if you see it that much on camera, but it's not reflective. Like it's not like if there's a lot of water in it. So it's really more thick, and then when you apply it, you see it's not as shiny. It's the one like on the bottom. It's not as shiny, but it will dry down with a way better coverage, but it will be a little more streaky. So by playing with those consistency, you can achieve different finishes, or you have to balance that in order to get like a good coverage but without looking streaky. So I just wanted to start with these two concepts about the consistency of body paint, because I will talk about them also later in the video. Then, what type of brushes should you use? So for that, I know that most body paint brands also do their own brushes, but for me, I think that sometimes they are a little bit expensive, and I take most of my brushes from the art supply store. So normally what I do is I take brushes that are made for watercolor, or at least like for mixed mediums, because obviously they are better with water. Normally I try to have brushes around $3 or $10 Canadian at the art supply store. You don't need things that are really that more expensive than that. But also I try to avoid like brush set that you can get like 5 brushes for $5 at Walmart. I bought those kind of brush set and they are horrible. They don't, normally the problem is that they don't really retain a lot of product on the brush. So that's why like affordable at the art supply store is generally a good deal. So for the type of brushes that I use, I love to use, first of all, the type that I use the most are brushes like that, which are like just flat brushes. Other than that, I use a lot of angle brush like that. These brushes are good like if you want to do like some corners, and they are also really good to do lines, like using it on the side like that. They are really good to do lines. And I also love to use like brushes like those that are tiny itty bitty tip and bristle that are really good for doing details. So they are the best type of brushes that I use for body paint. So now let's answer the question that I get asked the most. How can you make your body paint not looking streaky? So basically you want to have a decent coverage and you want to hide your skin, but sometimes it can look streaky and you have visible brush strokes. So what I do, and that's why I was talking about body paint consistency at the beginning of the video. So I start by applying thick layers or body paint with a thicker consistency, and then I add a layer that is more liquid to even out and help with the texture. So basically, first of all, for the thick layer, it really depends on the color that you are using. If you're using a dark color, sometimes one layer of thick body paint can be enough. If you're using lighter color, like yellow, maybe you would need 2 layers, and with color like white, which is kind of the lightest, you may need more than 2 layers. Be careful, don't go overboard with the layers, because like, let's say if you use white and you had like 4 or 5 layers of thick body paint on your face, then on place where it's more movable, where you are moving, it will crack, especially like on your forehead, around your mouth. So don't go overboard with the thickness of the body paint. So, but basically, I just start with 1 or 2 layer of a thicker consistency. Generally, as I said, you don't really see that much water. You see like it's a very thick cream. So it will look a little bit chunky. You will see more visible brush strokes. I don't know. You don't see them that much on camera. But yeah, you apply 1 or 2 layer of a thick consistency, you will have visible brush strokes. It will look streaky, but then I will add another layer just to make it a little more streaky, like that, and then go with a lot of water, make it more liquidy, and then a little bit more, and then go over it with a more liquidy. So basically, now I will have to wait that it dries down, but basically the 2 first layer are really help to get as much product as you can up to the certain limit on your skin, and then the last layer is really help to even out the texture. I do use a liquid consistency of body paint instead of using just plain water, because if you just use water, you may also remove some of the body paint that will transfer to your brush, and also having a liquid body paint will help to grab some of the spot that you may have missed. Then the last step that I do, that is kind of my secret, is I tend to set up my body paint once I've completed all of my work using body paint on my face. I set each color with a matching color of eyeshadow. Be careful on that one, you have to try it out before, because sometimes you will, and if you have a patchy eyeshadow, you will start having like a streaky look of body paint to a patchy eyeshadow look. So test them out before. For me, I use a lot of MAC and Makeup Forever eyeshadows, and they tend to be really good. You have to practice, you have to use also the right kind of brushes, of eyeshadow brush generally, to apply them on your skin over the body paint so it doesn't get patchy. You can use different type of finishes. You don't have only to use powdery eyeshadows. You can use some that have a little more creamier consistency, but obviously don't go with something that is too liquid or too creamy, because it may reactivate the body paint. But basically, this is how I do to get my body paint look not too streaky. So now let's talk about how to make details using water activated body paint. So basically the first thing you need is a good brush for that. There's 2 types of brushes that I use. The first one is a brush like this one, basically a brush, a pointy brush with hard bristle. As you can see, the bristles are quite stiff. The reason why sometimes I use this kind of brush is because it can retain more product. So if you have to make like longer lines, or you have to do a lot of detail and you don't want to dip your brush and your body paint all the time, so using a bigger brush that holds more product can be helpful. That was what I was really more using at the beginning, but nowadays I'm more using a brush like this. Sometimes I still use that one, but most of the time I'm using a brush like this. So this is, I don't know if you really see, it really has some really tiny and short bristles. This is a watercolor brush. This is a size 0, a mini detailer. So yeah, that's the type of brush that I use most of the time for my details. So for details, you want to have a more liquid consistency. Because if you get a thicker consistency, especially with a brush that small, it will get clumsy and then you will lose your precision. So basically, you dip your body paint. With a brush small like that, you may have to dip it in water more than one time just to get the right consistency in your puck. As you can see, I like to have a kind of puddle in the middle of my puck. So I have, and sometimes you can see like here, I can see it. it's a little too thick, so don't be afraid to remove the excess on the edge. So sometimes just be aware of how the body paint is gathered on your brush before starting to apply it. So then you just apply it. You really just want to have the bristle touching your skin, and that's how you are able to do fine lines. Obviously sometimes you don't necessarily realize it, but that was a problem that I had when I was more a beginner, was like really putting it too much and feeling the metal tip touching my skin, so having what I call having the bristle collapse. So as you can see, obviously then you get a way thicker line. So it's really important that you apply your body paint with the bristle and not the handle. So that's how you're able to do really precise. So it's really about a liquid consistency, checking your brush that you don't have clumps before applying it, and making sure that you're not having the handle touching your skin, but only applying it with the bristles. Then I have to say here again, I love to go over when I'm complete with the body paint. Sometimes I'm redoing some of my details using eyeshadow and a liner brush, a very thin eyeshadow brush. So sometimes it helps to have a more sharp look. So that's pretty much how I do sharp lines and details in my makeups. So now let's talk about how to correct or erase mistakes while applying water activated paint. So basically what I do is I always keep a clean brush that I use as an eraser. For me, I use this brush. This is my only bend knife brush, so I can easily spot it, and it is my designated eraser. So I never dip it directly in one of the pan of body paint. I try to keep it as clean as possible. So I will just do a quick mistake on my forehead to show you. So let's say I want to make a straight line, but I kind of screwed it. I wanted something straight. So basically, if the body paint is still wet, you can just take the brush and try to remove the body paint. So you just remove it, you wipe it on a towel, and then you go over. Sometimes if you want to remove more, what I do is I take my brush, I dip it in water. Sometimes you don't want your brush to be like too much water. You don't necessarily want to, especially if you see water dripping on your brush, that's a sign you have way too much. So I just tap it on my container. Sometimes I also wipe it on my towel to remove the excess. You don't want to, you just want it to be barely humid, kind of. And then you can go, you take off the body paint, you take off as much as you can, you wipe it on your towel, drip it back in water, and then you repeat the process until you get the desired result. Sometimes it can leave some of, you can still have some color residue, but generally it's not that bad. Oh, this time I was a little bit too runny. I had a little too much water on my brush, but yeah. You just go back and forth until you get the desired result. You can use other type of tools as well. Sometimes I love to use Q-tips, especially if I have to remove like just a tiny bit of makeup, for spot correction. It can be very useful. Other than that, I love to use makeup removing towel, especially if I have to correct on a wider area. So generally what I do is I just wrap it around my finger, and you can remove body paint on a wider area. Also, this one can be really good if you have more than one layer of body paint to remove. So basically you can also, if you need to be more precise, sometime I will wrap it around like the tip of a brush if I want to be a little more precise. Sometimes also they can be better to grab product than just using water and a brush. So basically this is how I correct most of my mistake while applying body paint. So then let's talk about how to prevent body paint from staining your skin. What I mean by that is like you apply the body paint, then it dries down, you take it off, like you wipe it with a makeup removing towel or with water, but sometime after you took off the product you still have some color on your skin. You try to rub it off, but it stays on. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a body paint stain. So you have to understand that the stain come more for the pigment that is used for the color of body paint. So it really more depends on the color that are used in the body, the pigment that are used in the body paint for that color. You can have a brand that will have some color that stain the skin and not other color. And that's the case with Mehron. I've always been worried about red because sometimes red is the color that stain the skin most with eyeshadows, but it's not the case with the Mehron Paradise Paint. There is one color that tends to stain the skin a little bit with the Mehron Paradise Paint, and it's green. So generally all shades of green I had some issue, color like Amazon green, dark green, but also color that are similar to green. Sometimes I had some issue with olive or even with teal. So basically the way to prevent that is to use a primer on your face before applying the body paint. So you don't need to apply a lot of primer, just apply the primer like you would do for a beauty makeup look or like you would do for a moisturizer if you're not used to do beauty makeup. But basically just a thin layer of primer so that body paint will enter in contact with the primer, and the primer will protect your skin from the stains. Also, I don't show that in my videos, but I always prime before doing my makeups, and it also helps to even out the texture before applying the body paint. So that's the main way I use to prevent body paint from staining my skin. Then let's talk about how to get the whitest or the purest whites, because white is one of the trickiest color to use with body paint, and the Mehron Paradise Paints are no exception. So generally the problem with whites is that it can easily get dirty and contaminated with other colors, and then it may look a little more gray and have some undesired undertones. So first of all, the trick is when I'm doing my makeup, I go from the lightest color to the darkest, and white is the first color that I apply. When I'm tracing my face, I try to go around the area that will be white using a white eyeliner, because if I use another color like gray or brown, it may mix back with the white body paint and then it will look dirty. So then the other trick that I have is I actually use 2 pucks of white body paint. I have what I call my clean puck and my dirty puck. For the dirty puck, you can see it's one that is almost empty, so that's why I'm keeping my almost emptied puck of white body paint. I have a purpose for them. So basically what you want to do with a clean puck, you want to have a designated brush that I will only use in this white body paint puck. So that's how you prevent contamination. So basically with this puck I will only use the same brushes. I don't want to mix other color in, so that's why I call it not the clean one. So let's say I just make a little bit more. So I really want to keep it the whitest as possible. Also, the reason why I start with white first, I'm sure that my brush will not enter in contact with other colors. So then if, let's say, I want to shade this spot a little bit, let's say I want to shade it with a pinch of gray, of Stormcloud gray. So I take my brush, I had some gray here, and I want to mix it back with some white. So what I'll do, and then I will take that brush and go with what I call the dirty puck, and I can add white over it and slightly mix it. Then if I go back, I will still clean my brush quickly. I dip it in water, rub it on a towel, and then I can go back in my dirty puck and reapply. Yes, I didn't have that much gray. I'll put more gray a little bit, and then, like as I said, I go back with white, I reapply, I go with my dirty puck, clean my brush, go back, and that's how I'm avoiding contaminating this one. So if later on, let's say, sometimes I don't cover all the areas that I white on my face. Sometimes I like to start by doing my teeth with white using the clean puck and shading them using the dirty puck as well, and then continuing my face with other whites area that I will still have my clean puck and my clean brush that are uncontaminated. The thing is, if I would go with, let's say I have a little bit of gray in that puck, I try to remove it, swirl it, it will stay there and my white will not look as white. Sometimes with the dirty puck, I mean, I can mix many colors. Sometimes I just also wipe it. If, let's say, I applied green, I applied gray, I mean, and then later on I want to add some spot of white highlight over pink body paint, so then I may get pink dirty in my dirty puck. So just in that case, just grab a paper towel, remove the body paint to try to bring it a little more white. So generally that's how I'm able to get a really white or pure white in my makeup looks. So my last tip for today is know your colors. Basically, even if you're only using the Mehron Paradise paint, not all colors will behave the same way, and some color will behave in an unexpected way, and you have to be aware of that when you're doing your makeup. So I will talk about 5 colors that I do consider exceptions and that you need to be aware of their specificities when you're doing a makeup. So the first color is white. White is always a tricky color with every brand of body paint, and with Mehron it's not an exception. So with white I noticed that I need to use more layer in order to get a good coverage because it is lighter. Also I need to make the body paint a little more liquidy than I would do with other colors. I also noticed that white, it's maybe only me, but I do think that it tends to grab less on the skin, especially on the nose. Especially if you use a thicker consistency, it will grab to your brush, it will move around, so you have to be more careful when you're using white, and generally I'm able to correct that by using it a little more liquidy than I would do with other colors. Then you have Stormcloud Gray. The thing with this one is that when you mix it with other color, it may not look as gray as you would expect. It's not a neutral gray, it kind of has some strong blue undertones to it. Like if you want to use Stormcloud Gray to shade yellow, for instance, it will turn a little more greenish. So if you want to shade yellow, I tend to prefer a shade like Mango, which is a darker or more dull yellow, or light brown. But because basically when you're mixing Stormcloud Gray with other color, consider that it will look a little more blue than you would expect. Then there's also some metallic body paints. So with the shade gold, the thing is it have a stronger green undertone that you may expect. So if you apply only gold directly on your skin, at the end it will look way more greenish than it looked in the pan. So generally how I avoid that is by first applying yellow and then topping it with gold, so the end result will look way more gold and closer to the color that you see in the pan than what you normally get if you only apply gold on your skin. Another color that sometimes you have to be cautious with is silver. Silver is way more reflective than the other metallic body paint, or at least in my opinion, and sometimes it can be too much. So if you're taking pictures, especially using a flash, it may reflect too much light. So sometimes what I do, I mix some of the silver body paint with Stormcloud Gray so that it gets a little more matte and reflect a little less light. Don't get me wrong, I love the fact that it can be really reflective, but be careful because if you put too much high shine body paint on your face, it will just look white by reflecting light. The last color I want to talk about is red. The main reason is because I think it's one, I mean it's not that bad on camera to be honest, but it's one of the colors that look the most different dry in the pan than when you apply it on your skin. Honestly, I do think that it's not that bad on camera with a proper lighting, maybe if I put it, but I do think that sometimes red can look like brown, so it does really look a deep strong red on the skin, but it's way deeper than how it looked dry in the pan. So these are the 5 colors that I do consider that are exceptions that you need to be aware of when you're doing your makeups. Is there any other thing that you want me to cover about the Mehron Paradise paints, or how to apply body paint in general? If so, leave it in the comments down below. And And now I'm back with makeup on. So I did a cosplay SFX makeup of Banshee44 from the video game Destiny. So basically for this look I used the Mehron Paradise paints and I also topped them with some eyeshadows. I used 9 colors of the Mehron Paradise paints and I used most of the tips and tricks that I talked in this video to achieve this look, especially to be more precise and to keep all those geometrical shape and those straight lines using the Mehron Paradise paints. So I hope you really enjoyed the video. If so, please feel free to give a like and subscribe to the channel for more cosplay SFX makeup tips and tricks and cosplay SFX makeup tutorials. And I hope to see you in another video. Bye!